Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Happiness in Higher Ed podcast. This is episode 10, and my name is John Hill, and I use pronouns he, him. And today I have Sasha Masoomi with me. And before I introduce her, I will go in and say our mission statement. So, in a world that can be engulfed in darkness, we must shine bright and lead the change for a better future. As we continue to shape and challenge emerging adults' minds, it is also our duty to reflect and remember what makes us happy and why we continue to do the work that we do. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce, this is Sasha, and Sasha B. Masoomi currently serves as Assistant Director of Residence Life at Miami University, where she has been since summer of 2015. At Miami, Sasha assumes the departmental leadership and coordination of training professional staff on a wide variety of topics, including crisis response, supervision, and assessment. In addition to her role of supervising and training professional staff at Miami, Sasha also has the pleasure of serving as on-campus advisor to the Miami University chapter of the National Residence Hall Honorary, NRHH, as well as serving as the Central Atlantic Regional NRHH advisor for the National Association of College and University Residence Halls, as they strive to provide recognition and service to the advancement of college and university housing. This past summer, Sasha served in her third year as faculty member for the Hawaii Stars College, which is actually where I met Sasha. A 3-day experience for undergraduate students interested in learning about the student affairs and campus housing professions. Before arriving at Miami University, Sasha spent 2 years serving as the Assistant Director of Residence Life at Western Illinois University, 5 years serving as a complex director at the University of Oregon, 2 years as a graduate hall director at Portland State University, where she also received her Master's of Business Administration and received her undergraduate degree from Oregon State University, where Sasha served as a resident assistant for 3 years. Sasha has a special interest in issues surrounding college student and professional staff mental health, suicide prevention, and reducing the stigma around mental health. Whew. Great bio, love it. Would you like to add anything to that?
No, that was great. I will say that I actually just completed my term with Concur. So that was a great experience as their regional NRHH advisor. That just ended about a week and a half ago. So it was a great experience and one that'll hold dear with me for a long time.
Nice. That's awesome. So if you're okay with it, we're just going to roll into the questions if that's good. All right. So what was the reason you started to pursue a career in higher education?
Yeah, so you mentioned that I got my undergrad degree from Oregon State University. It was a great experience. I was an RA for 3 of those years, and I'm also a first generation college student. And so it was a great way, quite honestly, to pay for college, but I really got hooked. But I thought to myself, great, that's something you do in college and then it ends and then you move on with the rest of your life. And so I moved on to get my MBA, Master's of Business Administration at Portland State. And I don't even know if I was there a month before I said something's missing. I really missed the camaraderie, the ability to help students, the working with students. And so I found a way to get re-involved in grad school. I was lucky enough that they actually were going through a transition from privatized housing to having a residence life office. And so they were really excited about the idea of having somebody who had some res life experience. So even though I thought that chapter was over, I missed it. I wanted the opportunity to help. I missed the students. And so I was really excited to get involved. And then it kind of happened again when I was graduating from my master's degree. I ended up taking some classes in what's called the PACE program, post-secondary adult and continuing education at Portland State, because again, I just sort of was missing some of that stuff. Like the business stuff was interesting. I enjoyed it and I was happy to have that to fall back on, but I wanted to take those higher ed classes. And as I started taking those, my supervisors, my faculty were like, why don't you think about higher ed? And I kept pushing it away, like maybe later. And then I applied to both. And when I got offered the job at the University of Oregon, I just was like, I'm going to be way happier doing this than I am in corporate America. And yeah, maybe my dream of supporting my family might look a little different. But I knew that my 9 to 5 and my 5 to 9 would be happier in that environment. And I just always promised myself that at any point, if that wasn't true, hey, you have that degree, you can go and explore the business world. And I'm really proud that I have that. Like, I do think that's a really important thing and great thing in my life. But I told myself, like, I'm not my grandfather who stayed at one company from the time he graduated high school till retirement. And that's not what the world was like anymore. And it was okay to go try out higher ed. And here I am still in higher ed and still feeling like it makes me happy.
Got you. So I know that you had mentioned that. Like, do you think that you're ever gonna go take that MBA route, or is it just happy right now?
Yeah, honestly, as I've moved up in my career, I've definitely felt like the MBA has actually been really great to have. Now I supervise staff. I definitely use my management skills. I've only had one time in my entire career where I've applied to jobs where I was asked to submit a CV because they were a little bit concerned and wanted to know which higher ed courses I had taken to supplement the MBA. And but other than that, everywhere else I've ever applied or talked with, they always see it as an asset, and I feel like I see it as an asset. And I'm naturally very like I'm a 2 on the Enneagram, and I'm a blue. Like I'm a very people person. I'm extroverted, and so I think it actually like help supplement because it grounds me. It reminds me once in a while, like, oh yeah, I do need to think about this sometimes from, systems thinking that I got from having the MBA.
Got you. Okay, nice. That's interesting. And I never would have thought of seeing that be a tool like in the first year that I was in grad school until I actually went and did a summer internship at UMass Lowell, and some of their hall directors were getting MBAs because it was like an additional thing that like they got the cost remission, or however they could take courses, I guess is the best way to put it. And they were doing that because of that, those different skills that you learned. And I was like, that's interesting. So that's awesome. The next question that I have for you, this can be a loaded question, is what makes you happy? And one thing specifically to higher education, and then one thing personal.
Yeah. So one of the reasons why I continue to stay in res life, and one of the reasons actually that led me to Miami, is I really enjoy working with grad students and new professionals and building that relationship and seeing growth, right? And seeing people excel, seeing the light in their eyes when things connect. And so professionally, I mean, I acknowledge that I'm a very small part of people's journeys. Like, especially if we're talking grad students, like I might be their supervisor, direct or indirect supervisor for a year. Maybe if we're lucky, we're on team together for 2, and then they're going to go off, right? And for a lot of them, this was the start, the foundation to their career. And so I might not even be the memories they think about the most, right? They might think a lot more about things a little further down the line. But I got to be there when sort of the spark was lit. And so I really enjoy that. It makes me happy. It makes me proud. I really try to instill in the individual that they should make themselves proud. Like, it's not my pride that's the important factor, but I also am proud. When I catch up with people, I see them at conferences, or I keep track with on social media, and I've had people who are now published authors and doctors, and even those that have not gone into higher ed are lawyers and physicians and doing a lot of teachers, doing a lot of really great things. And so when they win an award, or when they have a great year, when they publish, or when I read their research and I have no idea what they're talking about, but that's great because they're excited about it. Like,
yeah.
I've read friends and supervisees research on the Numidian War, and I don't even know what that is, but that's fine because it's something they were like, they geeked out about, they got excited about, they researched, they worked hard on, and then they published on this. And so I really enjoy that. I love seeing that spark. I love being a small part of people's journeys. And then, where are they now kind of stuff, I think is what really makes me happy in this work. And, I'm more removed from the students. I try to stay connected to the students. I advise, and I think that's actually some of the stuff that I've been involved in. You mentioned Stars College. I've also done, NASPA has an undergraduate conference, and I've been a faculty for that. I've done CACUR stuff and NICUR stuff. And I try to do things that connect with students, but I also realize that like every year I'm in this profession, I'm a year removed from the student experience. And like, I'm honestly getting to the point where I'm like, close to their parents' age, and I have to acknowledge and realize that, like, I'm getting closer and closer than I am to their age. And so for me, it really is a lot of the staff connection now. And I think Miami has a great grad, program. And I worked at Western Illinois, which had a great grad program. And I really enjoy working with graduate students, new professionals, and helping that foundation. And I think burnout is huge. I do a lot of work and talk and conversations around burnout and secondary traumatic stress, and I know that not everybody is going to continue in this field for long, and that's okay. But sometimes people don't continue in this field for long because that foundation wasn't solid. Like if somebody chooses to leave, I support them. Like I'm really excited when they find that new passion. But I've also known people who left because those first 2-3 years were so rocky that they can't imagine it ever getting stable. And so I want to be that stability for someone early in their career. So that makes me happy. Personally, I mean, I'm a big people person. I'm very extroverted. I love being around people. And so my friends and my family that I'm close to really mean a lot to me. I have a younger brother that is really, really important to me. And so being able to see him makes me happy. Being able to see my parents make me happy. And then in March, I adopted a dog, Bella. And, I've always been an animal person. My parents have had dogs, and I love animals, but I never really understood how great it would be to have somebody waiting for me at home. So it really has been great to come home, and she's like, "You're my world. I've been waiting all day for you." Like, I mean, you can't not be happy when you see that, when she's just so happy to see me after my day. And it does help me realize that some of my problems, like that I think are so big, aren't that big, because, here is a dog who's like, "What? Everything's great. As long as there's a ball and some food, like, the world's great." And it reminds me of that. And she also gets me to get out into like nature and go for walks, which I think is also really healthy. Like I'm not coming home and just sitting on the couch waiting till tomorrow morning when I get up and repeat the day. Like I have to, do things. And she sort of gives that purpose, which I think is great.
Got you. Nice. And I think it's funny that you mentioned with with the higher ed piece is I appreciate that, because I don't think that do you remember what you gave us at the Hawaii Stars College that first year?
I'm not sure. What was it that I gave you all?
So you had given us it was a Miami University charger, like a little portable charger for your phone. And I just remember that experience, and it was so great. And just that was like the first time that like I had like envisioned myself, because like when I had that conversation with my supervisor beforehand, it was like, "Oh, you could do this." And then when I went there and had that conversation with you about like looking at schools that were like for counseling based programs and like cake prep accreditations and things like that. And then you mentioned Western Illinois, and then I did that, and it was just like you were definitely one of the first people that I like took the initiative to take that step. So I wasn't necessarily a grad, or I wasn't pro staff, but you were someone that definitely pushed me to pursue higher education. So I just wanted to come on here and say thank you for that.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, and honestly, the photos that you post of your dog are adorable, and I am very jealous because she does look very happy, very, very happy.
Well, I will say Stars was probably, I honestly believe that Stars was the best thing that I have done in my career. And like I said, I've done a couple other institutes, but, and it's also cool, like to talk about the See the Spark. I saw the spark in a lot of people that week, and then to follow their lives. Like I am 100% all about, like, I stay on every group me I've ever been on. Like other people are like, "Oh, the experience is over." Well, and I want to stay on because I want to ask you 2 years later how you're doing, and 5 years later how you're doing, and like check in. And so, yeah, it's been really awesome. And there's some really great people from that cohort, that cluster, but even just the entire experience, who now, I mean, they're full-time professionals now, and to watch them, what they've gone on to do has been pretty amazing. And some of them in higher ed and some in other fields, but like still, like just to see them really thrive and are excited about what they're doing is pretty great.
Yeah, no, it's awesome. I loved it. I wish I could go back, but here we are. But yeah, so the next question that I have for you is, what keeps you resilient in the face of some of the challenges you've faced, whether that be budget cuts, stress from the pandemic, and having a new dog, which it sounds like it's not really stressful, but still.
Yeah, I think about my sphere of influence a lot, and I have a lot of power, and so that's important. But I also realize the limitation of my sphere of influence, and so I try to think about the things I can control and the things I can't, and letting go of those things. Earlier today I was in a session and they talked about leaves on a stream, and this idea that you can stop and pick up those leaves and try to stop there from being leaves in a stream, and that will never end, right? The tree is going to drop more leaves, or you can watch them go by peacefully and sort of find peace in them, like continuing on in nature. So I try to think about the things I can't control. But in crisis, people look for leadership, and I want to be able to lead in those crisis situations. And I think, COVID in 2020 taught us about some of that around, like, what does it mean to lead in crisis? And it's not always about having the answer. I think it's really about navigating and knowing the difference about what I can control and what I can't, and helping others realize what they can control and what they can't, and in how that can change in different situations, right, in different spheres. And so we have to deal with situations in the time we have, and we have to have an attitude where we're trying to be resilient, and we're showing others around us that they can be resilient, and that, yeah, like, we don't have to have positivity in every moment. We don't have to always act like this is okay, because it's okay to admit that it's not okay, but also that we've gone through a lot of things in our lives, and we've gone through 100% of the things that we faced in our lives. And so we're going to be able to take these challenges head on, I think is important. And I think sometimes people think a lot about best case, worst case scenario. And I like to talk to people a lot about most likely case, right? Like, our minds go worst case, and I get that. But can we talk about, like, the chances of those things actually happening? Not high. Now, the chance of something not great happening is high. So then let's try to mitigate that. Let's try to focus on those things and what we can do to lessen the effects of some of the most likely negative things. I also, I think about my mentorship, and I think about my peer mentors. I have some really great friends, and, I'm a little bit, I've been in the field for a little while. And so I'm now lucky enough that I have friends who are in director levels at some institutions. And I have friends who are in specialized positions around things like crisis or assessment or, dean of students type offices. And so I can tap into those resources and ask for support, ask their opinions, sort of have a community of practice. I think that's huge. And my community of practice is up and down and left and right? Like, I value the opinions of those that are living in the hall and having that experience, and the brand new grad, because they are learning about theory that I never thought was I couldn't even imagine. And I'm sitting here talking about chickering, and they're like, who is that? And waves. And so I want to listen, I want to learn, and I want to grow too. And so my network, my community of practice involves a lot of different people. I try to keep it a lot of, diverse thought and diverse opinions and diverse experiences. And, find people who I can trust to support me when things get tough. And hopefully I'm there to support them when things have gotten tough. And, in 2020, I had close friends who were laid off, right? Like, their institution just could not, and working with them around what to do next and next steps. And sometimes that meant just shutting up and letting them be sad and cry. And that's a way to support. And sometimes that meant brainstorming and trying to think of ways to get through things. And the same was true for me. There were dark moments that I had. And I think the best thing I could do in those moments was have people who I could process those things with. I think talking is really important, and not bottling those emotions up. And so talking through that, and then celebrating when things got brighter, and talking about how I might be able to show the way for someone else who might be having that experience in a month from now, feeling like we have each other's back, like, and just knowing somebody was behind me, or some buddies were behind me, I think is great, because it's not fun. Like, it's not fun to be lonely when you're excited and happy and celebrating, and it's not fun to be lonely when things aren't going well. And so I look to my support network quite a bit to help me through, and I'm really, really appreciative of those people. And I try to tell them, I think that we should take moments to recognize. And I look for those moments, and it does surprise people. I do these activities formally and informally, like with friends, but I also do it like with my team that I supervise, where we'll talk about like, when is somebody's birthday? What's your favorite thing about that person? And I mean, it makes them blush, but like a lot of times it's really surprising because we just don't take the moment to say, wow, I really love this thing about you, because we just assume the person knows. Taking that time to really show people why you appreciate them, I think is really important.
I literally have nothing nothing to say. That was amazing. And yes, there is only one thing that I will touch on, and I think that it's when you were talking about having a network that was up, down, left, right, and having the ability to play off of that, like talking to a new grad that, is learning the new theory and all that, like they have the new ideas, the new perspective, and then you kind of like merge those ideas together and like say, maybe this won't work, but that will work. And like, I think that's such a valuable thing to have, and have that perspective. And that's something that's awesome. That's really good, especially like in the crisis management, like that honesty from your bio and the way that you've been speaking, that seems like it's your wheelhouse, and I will definitely give you a call if I ever need help.
Absolutely. I'll pick up for sure.
Got you. All right. So next question is, what are some of the ways that you practice self-care to stay on your A game?
Yeah. So, I mentioned people and liking people, and I like helping people, and I'm energized by my work. And so in some ways, some of my self-care is caring for others. Again, I mentioned sort of the Enneagram 2, and I'm also a Cancer. And so, that's a very feely sign. And so I definitely would say I do, in a lot of ways, taking care of other people makes me feel valued, makes me feel appreciated, makes me feel like I have my worth. My dad used to talk to me about, if someone could say one thing about you, when you're gone, saying that you're somebody they could count on, somebody that was loyal, that they knew would be there if they needed them, was huge. And I believe that too. So in a lot of ways, that is for me a type of self-care, caring for others. But I do need a break too. Like I try to remind myself that you absolutely cannot pour from an empty cup. And you have to remember that you can't be there for others if there's nothing of you to give. So sometimes, like for me, a good way to charge, because I am so extroverted, sitting home alone doesn't really help me, but being alone in like nature does. Maybe it's because I'm then like not alone, I'm around the birds and the squirrels, I don't know, but like I feel like I'm a part of something bigger when I go into nature. I'm originally from Oregon, and so I did not realize how much I was going to miss Oregon until I wasn't there. The fact that, I went to grad school in Portland, and even though I was in downtown Portland has zoning where there's park blocks. There's literally blocks of little mini parks and forests in the middle of downtown Portland. And so I did not take advantage of or recognize how easy it was to go to the coast or go to a mountain or go, to a waterfall, until I was in kind of flat Western Illinois, and like realizing that I missed some of that. And so I look for ways, but I found nature there too. Like, and I found nature in Ohio. And so I like to go on hikes. I enjoy, photography, and so I merge the two a lot, where I'll go out and take photos of nature and just sort of like realize, this sounds a little corny, but like this moment won't happen again. Like this piece of water rolling over this rock is captured in this moment, and that same thing's not going to happen again. And so I do that. I think, having the puppy is nice too with that, because I kind of mentioned like she has to go out. And so even on days where I'm not feeling it, I'll leave. And there's a little like nature preserve-ish area near campus, and campus actually has some trails around it too. And so we'll go on little walks and hikes. And even if I'm not like feeling a 5-mile walk or something, we can go for a 15-minute jaunt around, the block, and it still is nice to get out and get the fresh air. But I think, spending time with people still is my love language. And I think that a big part of what helps me take care of myself is just being around positive people. I think about a lot of my like mantras and quotes and things I think about is about this idea that you really are a product of those you surround yourself with. And so I try to release positive energy into the world, but I also recognize that like the energy I'm around is going to really seep into me. And I've seen myself be around more negative people and then feel a little more negative, and I realize when I'm near more positive people I feel more positive. And so you know, a lot of my stress management is around finding people to connect with and talk with, and I think talking about work is okay. You know, I know some people are totally against that, and I respect that, but I find it cathartic as well to just like process, because again, I'm a talker and I'm extroverted.
Yeah.
So I love it if we can go, you know, get dinner together and chat. Or, you know, if you're willing to invite me into your space, I consider that a big deal. Like I think that it's a privilege that somebody would choose to let you into their home or be around their family. And so I really treasure that opportunity. And you know, I think another thing is I think a lot about like my schedule and setting up my schedule for me, and figuring out ways to organize my work that reduces stress. I was actually just talking to some grads today during training, saying like, I want you to know that you obviously we have, you know, hours that our offices are open, but beyond that, if you need or want to structure your morning where you want to come in a little earlier, and because you know that nobody else will be in the office and you want to get some work done, that's awesome. Like there are people who do that. And if you're the type of person who wants to answer emails a little later, that's awesome as well. But absolutely talking to those around you to understand why you're doing it so that they don't feel pressure to do it as well, right? And so like I do look at emails late at night, and I do think about, you know, the delayed response and not sending things out until the morning whenever I can. But one of the reasons why I look at my emails at night is because I do get stressed if I wake up in the morning and I see I have 40 emails. Like, it makes me less stressed to clear out the inbox before I go to bed, or mostly clear it out, than starting my day feeling like I'm never going to be able to get over this hump. You know, and so that's something I really worry about for my own stress level is if I come in on the beginning of the day and I'm like, this to-do list is just too large, I might take twice as long to complete one thing because I'm just thinking about the other 23 things, versus if I, you know, take a little bit of time late at night, you get, I don't know, a cup of tea and sit down and say, oh, I'll bust out a couple emails, or I'll organize my emails. Maybe I won't reply to them, but I'll get them ready for the morning, is actually a really great, like, stress reliever for me. And it just makes me feel more prepared and organized. But I've learned in the last few years, I need to be transparent with that. And I may need to set up things like delayed responses, because what I don't want to do is create a culture where people think they have to do both. So they are coming in early and feel like they need to be responding to things late at night just because Sasha's responding late at night. So I'm trying to be more mindful of that.
Got you. And it's not, I wouldn't say it's comical, but I noticed that was the first thing when I sent you, because I do this all after hours. It's not a part of my work at all. And I sent you that email. I think it was like around 8:30, 9 o'clock. And that was in your signature, was like just giving you a heads up, like I might be sending some emails late at night. So I appreciated that, because it was like, it kind of like once again sets that it doesn't set like you have to do this, you know, just because I'm doing it doesn't mean you have to do it. This is just my personal choice to do that. And the one thing, once again, very well at answering these questions. I have nothing to talk, like they're just amazing. But I will say one thing is that the one thing that I did pick up is you talked about your environment. And I think that that's one thing that I picked up on specifically in the pandemic, is like how your environment affects you. You know, if you're around people that see the positive side of stuff, or just see that, you know, today I went outside, I got some fresh air. This was a great day. You know, you're like, oh, and this is cool. Like, you know, doing the little things is immense to some people. And that kind of like gets you in a better mood. Whereas like some people are like, yeah, I went outside. You know, I went outside, you know, so it's kind of like that. The environment that you put yourself in also sets yourself up for success, or also could set you into a negative mindset. So
Yeah, and I love if they're, obviously I want to respect the other person, but if I'm doing like a one-on-one meeting, I love it when the other person's like, let's go for a walk or let's sit out, even if we just sit outside the building. I mean, I do enjoy being outside. And, except for like super hot in maybe July and, when it's snowing, and even when it's snowing, if it's not actively snowing, I'm cool bundling up and sitting outside, but I like to be outside.
Got you. Nice. And the last question that I have for you, and I know that you had talked about the mantras and certain quotes and things like that. So this might be challenging because what is the one piece of advice you live by in your practice?
Yeah. So I was sort of thinking about this and sort of like my pearls of wisdom. Like I mentioned, I think I'm lucky because I'm in training right now and I lead training. And so I usually interweave little like, I don't know, Sasha isms into the conversation. And I was just talking about one today and we were talking about, it was full-time and grad students, but a grad student had asked a question just before that about like balancing class time and, class work and office time or whatever. And then the full-time staff were talking about, I think, being on duty and things like that. And so we were talking about a lot of balance type stuff. And so I mentioned that, I don't look at life and I don't encourage people to think a lot about work-life balance, mainly because one, it looks like two opposing things. It's like your work and your life have to be in constant fight with one another. And also a balance means there has to be like a focal point that is only one, right? Like there's only one place equals perfect balance.
Mm-hmm.
You're searching for that forever, you're probably going to get super frustrated. And what if something throws it out of whack, right? You finally find balance and then, whatever, you get sick and you miss 3 days of work and now balance is off or what, or, you have a family emergency or whatever. And so I struggle with that concept. And something I realized a few years back was I think work life or any 2, 3, 5 things that are going on in your life is more like a dance, like a tango, where there are multiple partners. They're both there. They're both important. Like, I mean, the truth is I wouldn't have a life if I didn't have a job that paid my bills, but also it's a purpose.
Yes.
I value work. It isn't in my mind, it doesn't stand in the way of my life. I want to work the kind of work that I don't need an escape from.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not just waiting till 5 o'clock, because if that's true, then, maybe I should explore other options. Because work is a big part of your week, your day, your month, So I think about it a lot like a tango. There are two partners. Sometimes one is leading, sometimes the other is leading, but they're both there. They're both in your mind. They're
Mm-hmm.
both constant. Sometimes the tempo gets a little fast. Sometimes the tempo slows down. And the other great thing about dancing is my dad, really good dancer. I did not inherit that. Like both of my parents have skills that for some reason my brother got and I didn't. Like my brother is both athletically inclined and musically inclined. I can't carry a tune and I'm bad at most sports I try. But the thing about dancing, as long as you like are willing to, you move in some way and that's still dancing, like there, you can be a little off and it still can look great. Or, I think about music, that, anything could be music, any noise could be music in my mind. And so I think of that with the work-life tango, that even if it's a little bit off beat, it can still be really beautiful. And so that gives me a lot more grace. I'm giving myself a lot more grace than if I was looking for this perfect balance. Because yeah, sometimes I'm going to have a misstep and I'm going to miss a note or I'm going to miss a turn, but I can still get back on beat and I don't have to dwell on that forever, that it's just crumbled everything for me. So I look at, my practice is trying to find that work-life tango, and maybe the tango becomes, the waltz. Sometimes it changes, but that's okay. And that's still beautiful. So I think that's a big one I think about in my life. And, like I said, I don't want to feel like my work is taking me away from my life, nor do I want to feel like my life takes me away from work. Like that, like I had to make some sort of, give up something because of that, and there are things where even with work, like there are decisions I've made in my career that were quote unquote steps back. I one time in my career, I took a position that would have been seen definitely as lateral, but maybe even slightly down step. There was less supervision. The pay was a little less. There were a lot of things that people may have seen as a step backwards, or even like, well, you were in that role, your next step should have definitely been up. But my quality of life increased. And so, I don't feel like I want to always feel like I'm making some sort of, I'm negatively impacting my work because I chose my quality of life to be better, nor do I want to feel like what I'm doing to advance my career causes me to then have a lower quality of life, right? Like I try to make decisions that give me opportunities for both. And I even think an example of that is some of the work I still do with students and student leadership, and I've had some amazing role models in my career who told me that it was okay. Like there wasn't some sort of like timeline that you couldn't be silly and wear a costume and cheer because you hit 30,
Yeah.
and I think having that permission was really awesome to feel like it's an and, not an or. You can be somebody who is doing really serious research or really serious work or really serious decision making and advance your career, and then also be silly at this conference, or also make a choice to spend your weekend doing this instead of that, or take a week off of work. I had a supervisor, and I don't even know he realizes this, but he would take 2 weeks off to go be a counselor at a camp for kids who had cancer. And I thought to myself, that's how he's using his vacation time, one, to give back, but also he went and had fun, like archery and face painting and horseback riding. Like he was able to get joy as well as volunteer and give back during that time.
Got you. Nice. The depth of your answering of questions is phenomenal, and I'm just like shocked. I can't say anything. But no, that's awesome, and I think that's a very key thing, is that if you look at it one way, it's going to be one way, but if you have that ability to see it as the tango, the waltz, it's ever shifting. I think that's such a valuable thing. And thank you. I will actually use that moving forward, because that's how I took a vacation, and then I came back, and I've just been not feeling the same sense, because like I've had this expectation that it has to be a certain way. And so I appreciate that.
Yeah,
So
no problem.
thank you. But thank you. That's all the questions that I have for you. So I just want to say thank you again for being a guest here on the podcast, and for taking the time. I know this is the second day of RA training, so I know that this is probably maybe hour number 12, hour number 13 for you. So I appreciate that. Yeah. So thank you. Do you have any last comments, questions, or anything?
No, I mean, I think this podcast is a really great idea, because I think, in the world that I think higher ed in general has had, a hard couple years, and not just COVID, where it's having a little bit of an identity crisis around how do we think about the impact of our work, not only on students, but on ourselves, and it does take a lot out of people. It can take a lot out of people to be in higher ed. And so I think focusing on happiness and positivity is also great. I had mentioned a little bit when we were chatting before we even started, about burnout and compassion fatigue. But there's also a concept called compassion satisfaction that I like to talk about a lot too. That is like the warm and fuzzies you get from helping others. And that's the clinical term. No, but that's how I call it. But this idea that you feel value, like it gives your life some value to know that you're helping others. And I think it's really great for us to take a step back once in a while and think about the good that comes from our roles, while also acknowledging and humanizing and not being afraid and running away from, this work can be draining and this work can be difficult. And so where do you find your purpose, right? What's your why? I think is really important when doing this work, because if you can't find the why, then I don't want it to be harm. I don't want this work to be harm for someone that they're just holding on, hoping maybe the next job, maybe the next step, maybe the next year, things will be better. No, I hope that you can find something, some shining light, some ray of sunshine, even in some of those darker times.
Nice. And it's funny that you mentioned those warm and fuzzy feelings, because every single time that I've done a podcast and after leaving this, and then the next day, I'm always just like on this like just amazing like I'm just like everything's better. I don't know why, I can't explain why, but it's just awesome sitting and hearing other people talk about not only their experiences, but like the things that make them do the things they do is just an incredible feeling. So yeah, so thank you again for being here. So just for you all to know, if you would like subscribe to our YouTube channel, as well as follow us on Spotify, as well as Apple Podcasts. So thank you again, Sasha, and I hope you all have a great rest of your day.